to pass. And she heard about the healthcare forum that I was having in my house, and she came to my house and the other people there, and that's how I met her. Then from there, she started, we had a poetry set at my uncle's place one time, and we would go and read our poems, and she wrote her first poem there, and read it, and we were pretty interested. That's how I heard about it.
Well, and isn't Mississippi a great success story in sort of the obesity world? I think so. I think that there's been a concentrated effort over the last 8 years. Maybe I'm wrong.
I might correct you, but I'm Dick's husband, Spike. We moved to Florida from Mississippi, Picayune, Mississippi, 2.5 years ago. We were very happy here. I can address obesity. We lived in Pearl River County, which is the first county after you leave Louisiana, about 60 miles north of New Orleans. Pearl River County was the fattest county in Mississippi. And I can only relate something anecdotal. If you went to the Walmart in Picayune, Mississippi, there were certain aisles you could just simply could not traverse. It was a terrible problem. And it had to do with diet, bad diets, and so forth, poverty.
Right.
The sorts of foods that are available
Right.
for poor people.
Mississippi was the fattest. When I taught at Tougaloo, some of the professors were doing research on obesity.
What'd you say?
When I was teaching at Tougaloo,
Mm-hmm.
some of the professors were doing research on obesity.
Yeah.
As far as state programs, I'm sure they have some, but whether they work or not, I sure didn't see any evidence.
And poverty has a lot to do with it. Because if you have 4 kids and 2 jobs and you're stretching money, you can't really afford the wheat bread. Or you buy things for stretchers like noodles, which is very unhealthy.
Right.
Or you can't really afford the then in the grocery stores.
Right. Yeah.
They're
I would like to ask a question and also make some comments. I can remember in the 60s, in fact, I started college in 1960, and I can remember in the 60s when we started, well, not we, they started at the college, some of the students started the movement. And all they were asking for was equal justice. Not integration, just equal. Because at that time in the 60s, they had separate community colleges, one for blacks and one for whites. And so we had to go to the black community. We had very good teachers there, very good teachers. And they were dedicated. And then they wanted to start the movement in 61. And my sister and I wanted to join that movement. But my grandmother got, anyway, she heard about it. Now, we were like 13 miles away where we went to the college. She had heard about it before we even got home. And she sat down and she talked to us. My dad talked to us. My mom was a teacher. In fact, all of her sisters and brothers were teachers. And they said, we know what you're doing and why you're doing it. But you and Jack, my sister, you can't be involved. Well, why? Why we can't be involved? All the other kids involved. Your mother could lose her job.
That's right.
She could lose her job. And you know your mother needs to work. So, okay, my sister and I we couldn't participate. In 62, I transferred to Bethune-Cookman as a junior.
To where?
Bethune-Cookman College in Daytona.
Okay.
Now it's Bethune-Cookman University. And
Was
They
that
start.
co-ed when you went, or was
Yes.
that, it was co-ed?
Yes, yes. And they started the movement there, and they wanted all the students, as many as could, to join in with this movement. Well, here again, I wanted to do this, and I talked it over with my mom and dad. I would call them. They said, no, your mother could still lose her job. And this was in 62.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in 64, I graduated from college. I still couldn't register to vote because I wasn't old enough. At that time, you had to be 21.
In Florida? In Florida?
In Florida.
Really?
In Central Florida,
Okay.
21.
Mm.
So I couldn't register to vote until the following year because I finished college I was 20, and then that March I was 21. So I had just turned, 19, and that March I turned 20. So I still had to wait a year. Well, anyway, making a long story short, after I finished college, I did my internship in Miami in the banking industry. When I came back home, my mother carried me to every bank in Marion County, and nobody would hire me.
What year
None
was
of the
that?
banks. This was in 64.
Mm.
You either had to be a nurse, a social worker, a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
No part of business,
Mm-hmm.
none whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a history that I know what you're talking about. It's a history.
Mm-hmm.
Except in Marion County, it wasn't out in the open, but you knew it.
Mm-hmm.
You knew where you were supposed to stand in the world. You knew you couldn't be out there in front. Because we would go up to the University of Florida in Gainesville to the Gator Ground every year, but they had a separate section for blacks to sit.
64.
This was in 64.
Well, the schools in Melbourne were not integrated until 65.
Yeah, something like that.
65?
Right.
Yeah, something
71 from Mississippi.
Well,
like that.
you're always special.
They were holding on.
The question I wanted to ask, all of the history that you were telling us about today, is that in your book?
Yes, ma'am.
It's all in your book?
Uh-huh. And some of it, this is a collection of my writings for 20 years. Now this one, all of the people that were in civil rights, and most of them in the South is in there too. Martin Luther King, Stokely Carmichael, the people that are known and unknown in Mississippi, Alabama, and I interview people in Tennessee, not Florida. And this one, I'm a part-time writer a contributing writer for a black newspaper. So some of the articles that I wrote on my uncle during his walk for the poor, they are in here, but it's not in here. So, and then the poetry, there's a poem in here that I wrote about our grandmother, my great-grandmother, about her father, peeping at her. It's called In the Prison Mind. I wrote this in 1998. This is my second piece. But I'm going to read the part about the name of this, In the Prison Mind. From the walls of prison, I cried for my unborn child, and my cellie ignored me. A cellie is a prison
Roommate.
your roommate, and so it's a symbolic. From the walls of prison, I felt pity for my sins and those committed against me, and my cellie laughed at me. From the walls of prison, I gained knowledge of my heritage. Choctaw and Cherokee, mother side, father side.